Welcome to Discovering. Tonight, we'll start out with a look at stocking cohos in the Ford River. We'll talk with the UP's very own two-time world champion taxidermist.
It's a tremendous honor to be singled out from some of the pieces that were there.
This summer on Discovering, we're on a UP Lighthouse Tour to show you some of the many lighthouses that are here in the Upper Peninsula.
Sit back and relax. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
The quality of the fishery here in the Upper Peninsula is managed by the Department of Natural Resources, as well as other groups and organizations interested in maintaining and improving its overall quality. One such organization is the Great Lakes Sport Fishermen, who I met up with on a recent Ford River coho stocking project.
Well, today we're planting coho salmon in the Ford River, right by the US 2 bridge. We're about 8 miles upstream from the mouth of the river.
I am Tara Novak. I'm from the Platte River State Fish Hatchery down near Traverse City, Michigan. Today we planted about 45,000 coho salmon into the Ford River here. And our truck here holds 3,200 gallons, one of our biggest units. Coming up from Traverse City, Michigan, we loaded the truck at the Platte River State Fish Hatchery, then drove about 6.5 hours up here. And this truck, again, holds 3,200 gallons, and there's a single dump in the rear of the truck, and we just open a valve after we connect a bunch of tubes down to the water, and they go on their own. Count them as they come out. Are you ready?
Yep, shoot the jet.
About 45,000.
If we dumped them in right at the mouth, the cormorants will find them, they'd be on them within a day. Way upriver like this, they'll filter down a little slower, so the birds probably won't actually find them for about 2-3 days. Give them a chance to imprint and disperse and filter out a little bit. Right now there's probably still some walleye in the river, and the mouth of the river has got a lot of bass in it right now. With these coho being planted in the Ford River upstream like this, they'll imprint very well. We don't have to have them in pens. And one of the reasons to use net pens is to haul them for offshore stocking. Some species like brown trout do really good that way down in Wisconsin. They haul them offshore and plant them. That way they go into deep water right away and the birds don't get at them, the cormorants especially. Where these fish will be filtering out, and they don't have to be imprinted. They're in the smolting stage right now where they're changing from adolescent to more juvenile, and they'll imprint really fast on this river. The Beatty Knock Sport Fishermen have been working with the DNR for several years, ever since the foundation back in 1989. So we help with the biologists. We pick out the sites and kind of agree on them where we'd like the fish planted, and they work with the tribes because some of the water is tribal water and some isn't. Where the Ford River is here, it is not tribal water, so that makes it fairly easy. We could just name the site and the DNR agrees with it and the fish get dumped in. Coho plant went really good. The fish look really good. So hopefully we'll have some fish coming back this fall and fall of 2020.
Each year, competitions are held at various levels showcasing the work of some of the best taxidermists in the country. In 2016, Tim Gorenchan of North Country Legends Taxidermy in Escanaba won Judge's Choice Best of Show and National Champion Cold Water Fish with this amazing pink salmon. He followed that up in 2017 with World Champion Best in World Cold Water Fish with this sockeye salmon. The World Championships are held every 2 years, and this year Tim was back with the spectacular 55-inch muskie. And, you guessed it, Tim won Best in World Cold Water Fish for the second consecutive year, as well as Competitor's Choice Best in Show. Tim topped that off with the Judge's Choice Best of Show, which is the highest honor achievable in the world of competitive taxidermy. I stopped in at Tim's shop, and with a bit of arm twisting, I got him to talk about it.
So the World Taxidermy and Fish Carving Championships were held this year in Springfield, Missouri, the end of April. They're held every 2 years around the country. They move them every time. So this past one was held in Springfield, Missouri. I brought this 55-inch skin-mounted muskie. It was caught by a fisherman from the Milwaukee area. It's approximately, I would guess, 45 to 50 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. I ended up making a mold and casted this is actually an exact copy of the fish's head. So it's all plastic, the eyes are glass. The teeth are actually real. I pulled the real teeth out of the fish's skull and put them in here because I just couldn't get anything else to work out quite as good. So with this fish, I was able to win the Best in World Cold Water Fish for the second consecutive championships. In 2017, I won it with the sockeye here to my left. So the way the World Championships work, there are 17 categories where they award a World Championship, and they range from birds, waterfowl, non-game birds, fish obviously, medium game heads, which would be like your deer, large game heads, which would be like your bison. So at any rate, there's 17 categories that are awarded Best in World. And for each of those categories, there's anywhere from 2 to, I believe, some of the bigger categories may have had 3 judges. So what those judges do is they look at each piece individually and score it. There's a pretty in-depth score sheet. And they look at it from a technical standpoint. They really study the anatomy really hard. I mean, they're looking with flashlights as close as you can get under the gill covers, in the eyes, up the nose, every which way they're studying it. So they're held to a really high standard. The technical score is a big part of it, but also the artistic merit of the overall piece comes into play for the final score. On all competition fish work, it's almost necessary to do an artificial head and artificial fins. In this case, this is an exact copy that was custom made of the fish's head and custom made of the fish's fins, a mold that I made and then poured in plastic. But I also do that on all my commercial fish. In most cases, it's not the fish's actual head, it's a stock head. So I use artificial fins and heads on all my fish work, all my commercial fish work. To me, it's a better end product. You don't have to worry about grease bleed. I mean, we've all seen the old fish hanging in the tavern where you're seeing grease bleed, this orange staining that comes here and a lot of times down in this area. That comes from just not cleaning the fish skin out properly. And on a lot of your trout and salmon, there's a very large mass of grease on top of the head, and it's extremely difficult to get that cleaned out. So by using an artificial head, you alleviate any issues that you have down the road with that. And it's very important, especially on your greasy species, like your lake trout, some of your bigger salmon and things like that. So a little more time consuming, a little more material cost, but in the end, a much, much better finished product. So with the muskie, I was awarded Best in World Cold Water Fish. At the World Show, the muskie is considered a cold water fish, which is a little bit different than other shows. But it also won the Competitor's Choice Best in Show. Every competitor who has an entry in the show is able to vote. So it's basically a popular vote by all the competitors as to what they feel is the best piece in the entire show. So I was able to win that, which was shocking. I mean, tremendous honor. I believe there was almost 550 pieces at the show. There was competitors from 28 countries and 46 states there. So I mean, people from all over the world. It was a tremendous honor to win that. But then even more so, it was selected by the judges as Judge's Choice Best of Show for the entire show as well. Out of the category winners, so all the Best in Show winners of your Best in World Whitetail, your Best in World Gamehead, your Best in World Waterfowl, the judges go ahead and they look at all the Best in World winners But of those 16, they picked the best of the best, and that was their pick was the Muskie. So it was a tremendous, tremendous honor. In taxidermy, there's no bigger honor in the world of competitive taxidermy than to win Best in Show at Worlds. So, I mean, if you would have told me 15 years ago when I started this that I would have achieved some of the awards that I've achieved competitive-wise, I wouldn't have believed you, to be quite honest. But it's tremendously humbling. It's a tremendous honor to be singled out from some of the pieces that were there and some of the artists from around the world that are amazing artists. It's just a tremendous honor.
Along the shores of the Upper Peninsula, you will find over 40 lighthouses, most built in the mid-1800s. Today, several lights still guide ships safely into shore. About a dozen are open for public tours, and a few are now bed and breakfast. Michigan has more lighthouses than any other state, and they attract visitors from across the world. What is it about lighthouses that fascinates so many? Their architecture, history, location? This summer, we're on a lighthouse tour across the UP to find out. First up, the Eagle Harbor Lighthouse, one of 10 lighthouses located in the Keweenaw Peninsula, and one of the easiest to find.
Easy to get to, you don't have to take a boat, you don't have to drive through the woods.
It's located right in the town of Eagle Harbor.
Welcome to the Eagle Harbor Lighthouse in Eagle Harbor. This was built in 1871. It replaced another lighthouse that was only 20 years old, and they decided to take it down. It's fun to watch the freighters go by, and that is why we are here, because the lighthouse helped the early copper miners get their product out and also their immigrants in. We have had 22 different lighthouse keepers, and they all lived in this building. And we had 2 assistant lighthouse keepers, and they stayed usually in town in some of the boarding houses. Later on in the 1930s, they moved 2 of our other buildings here so that they could stay on site. This was the lighthouse you wanted to be at because there were schools in town, boarding houses, there was a bowling alley here in Eagle Harbor, and schools. So this was a duty station that you wanted to stay at because you could have friends, you were not isolated. We are in what used to be the woodshed. Now it is the kitchen. When they put a furnace in the basement in 1907, they made this the kitchen. Everything in the lighthouse is donated because the last lighthouse keeper took all of his things with him. Jerry McKinney was his name, and he lived in here until 1982. And then we've got the parlor. This is usually set up like a dining room. We usually have the table set up with dishes and flowers in the middle of the table and tablecloth, you know, like they're going to have a meal. And because our big display room is the lens room. This is our number 4 Fresnel lens. It came from the lower entry on the Keweenaw because our number 4 Fresnel lens that was here has disappeared somehow. So we have this one now. We had to encase it in an enclosure so that nobody could touch it because it is quite valuable. This is our third light here in Eagle Harbor. Our first one was this one, the Fresnel lens. Our second one was a beacon for an airplane beacon, and we had red and white. Our signal is red and white every 10 seconds. We continue to have that signal. Copper Harbor is green. And our third light that is up in our tower right now is a very modern looking light, actually smaller than our Fresnel lenses.
A Fresnel lens uses a series of stepped pieces of glass or prisms to capture and refract light.
The prisms would focus the light into one direction so that it could go out and you could see it farther.
Lights are rated by size, with a first order light being the largest and sixth order the smallest.
Yeah, this is a number 1. Our light is a number 4. A number 1 is usually located on the oceans. There are no number 1s on the Great Lakes. This one is located in Oregon. Most of the ones on the Great Lakes are number 3s and 4s. Over here was our backup light when we had the airport beacon, and it was located outside because it did not have any of the electrical connections that could go on its own. So this is battery operated. And when they took our airport beacon out, they took this out also, and the Coast Guard let us have it to display. And it does light up every 10 seconds. And this is our tower. Now these stairs are in many different lighthouses. You know, you'll see them, you can see that they're all coming off the center post. This is the lighthouse keeper's room, set up as it would have been. In the early days, of course, they had to have a stove like this attached to the chimney because they didn't get a furnace until 1907. The Historical Society has owned and run this building since 1982. Almost all the lighthouses are automated now. And again, our signal is red and white every 10 seconds. And we are a working light, so visitors are not allowed in the light room, in the lens room up at the top of the tower, which disappoints many of them, I'm sorry to say.
Ginny was kind enough to give all you discovering viewers a peek at the light.
And there's our light. It was put in July of 1999. On the site, we have other buildings besides the lighthouse. This is our fog signal building right there, and originally was a whistle, a steam whistle, and they realized by the time they got the steam whistle hooked up that the fog was gone. So later on, they got a diaphragm fog signal.
Lake Superior stretches as far as the eye can see. From the top of the tower, you can also see the unique features of this light station that helps sailors navigate the harbor.
The bellbuoy marks the entrance to the harbor. It also marks a reef, which is just to the east of the bellbuoy, so that the boats don't hit it. Right now our water's pretty high, so it's not a real problem. But normally when the water's a lot lower, you can see the rocks. And then they have to use our two range rocks, which are located on the south beach, and line up, and then they can go between the range rocks and make it safely into the harbor without hitting any other reefs. The boats have to go around that bellbuoy, and then they line up on the shore over there are the two range lights. The range light are the two lights on the shore, one high, one low, to get boats into the harbor, which they must go through those two range rocks. They were built there in 1895, and they are 14 feet deep between them. And the reason they needed to be deeper was because as the ships were bringing in more and more people and miners and people looking for jobs up here, and also copper was heavy, and they needed the depth to get through there. They dynamited it actually to be deep enough. And then in the background is the Coast Guard boathouse. The boathouse itself is owned by the state of Michigan, and they allow us to put our displays in there. We have several boats in there. It was operated as a life-saving or Coast Guard station starting in 1939. Many, many rescues went on from there.
And of course, I had to ask if this historic building was haunted.
The Keweenaw Paranormal Association came out and investigated us about 5 years ago, and they did certify that we have a ghost in the lighthouse, and we also have a ghost in the White Building. And so that's another interesting story, and several of the lighthouse keepers and their assistants did mention that at the time. So we are certified that we do have a ghost. Come and visit our ghosts. Our hours are noon to 5 during June, September, and October. And then in July and August, we're open from 10 to 5. Sundays we always keep with noon to 5. There's a docent in the lighthouse to guide you through, and it is $5 for adults, and children are free. And there are 3 other museums on site. History Museum, Fog Signal Building, which is our Maritime Museum, and our Fishing Museum. The people that do the tours here are docents, which means they're volunteers and they're not paid, and they study the history. I have a docent handbook. If anybody wants to volunteer, I'll give you my number. And They show up on time and open up the buildings and talk to the visitors and welcome them. We have visitors from around the world, over 12,000 seasonally, and of course there are people here at night and there are people here in the morning when we're not open. People love to come here, so we're very happy that they do.
A quick reminder, if you're anywhere near the Escanaba area and want to get your kids familiar with the sport of shooting, head out to the Great Lakes Sportsman's Club on any Saturday through August 3rd for the Summer Youth Shooting Program. Registration is from 8:30 till 10 a.m. The program exposes youth to various shooting sports under the strict control of certified instructors. All equipment is supplied and lunch is provided. Ages 5 through 18 need to be accompanied by an adult. For more info, visit greatlakessrc.com. Each year, the UP Honor Flight makes 2 trips to Washington, D.C. to give veterans the opportunity to experience some of the wonderful monuments built in their honor. This would not be possible without the help and support from the local communities. That help comes in many forms, including various benefits held across the region. I'll leave you with a look at one such benefit that recently took place just across the border in Niagara.
Thankful for every one of you guys that are standing here. This is for you too. John passed the torch to you guys a long time ago, and it's up to our younger generation, and they know that, and our kids know that, and we're going to keep passing it to be able to do things like this. So John, here's to you. God bless you.